Well, good morning, guys. This is Tim Edwards, and I feel like I'm on day 107 on this coronavirus thing. But it's to hold faith, be strong, and let's just keep looking at what the Word says. In Genesis chapter 3, as I said in one of my earlier messages, all good pastors have to go to the book of Genesis. So in Genesis chapter 3, verse 1, the serpent was more cunning than any beast of the field. And he said to the woman, has God indeed said, you shall not eat of every tree of the garden? Now look at the lie. God said you not eat of one specific tree. So he changes it so it sounds like a truth, but it's actually a lie. And he says, has God said you cannot eat of every tree? That's not what God said. So now Eve is stuck. Because if she says yes, that's wrong, and if she says no, that's wrong. No matter what she says, yeah, it's wrong. In this situation, it is best for her to walk away. Now, unfortunately, human beings like you and me cannot walk away from a statement like this. It's a trap. It's a verbal trap. We are caught. And no matter how we answer it, we're going to be wrong. Watch for those verbal traps. Because no matter how you answer this one, you are wrong. And the woman said to the serpent, we may eat of the fruit of the tree of the garden, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, God said, you shall not eat, nor shall you touch it, lest you die. So yes, she interacts with the devil, and immediately she fails. Her first mistake was to interact, was to respond to the verbal bait. You see, the devil comes along and it gives you verbal bait, and God help me, every one of us, including myself, will respond. And I don't know why. We see the trap and we respond. We want to engage because we're going to do it differently. You're not. You're going to get caught. You're going to get sucker punched. And partners, spouses, husbands, wives, do not do this to your spouse. This is terrible. This is a really terrible technique of communicating because it's a trap. It is not designed by God. It's designed by the devil, used by the devil, and do not do it. It says, yeah, the devil said to the woman, in verse 4, you will not die, for God knows that the day you eat it, your eyes will be open and you'll be like God and you'll know good and evil. So here comes some more of the bait. The trap is slowly closing. Hey, if you eat of this, you're going to have knowledge. You're going to be like God. You're going to see things. You're going to know things. Okay? Because God's hiding things from you. That's what he's intimating. He's intimating that God's hiding. When my son was a baby and he was like 3 or 4, I'd say, hey, Josh, you come find me, I'm hiding. He couldn't help himself. He had to come and look for me. It was the cutest thing. If ever I was hiding, he had to come find me. We hate to know that there's something we don't know. We have to find out. Okay. So when the woman saw that the tree was good for fruit, now she sees it. She looks at the fruit and now it becomes inviting. Up until this point, it didn't bother her. But now it becomes inviting because the seed has been planted that she needs to eat that fruit. And guess what? Now she wants to eat it and it looks good. And so the thought is that's good. So the temptation now looks good as well. This is a step 2 of falling into trouble. Number 1 is speaking back. Number 2 is looking. And she took of its fruit and she ate. And then she gave to her husband, ate too, because now she's got to bring someone else into her sin. That's also what we do. We like to bring other people into our sin. Then the eyes of both of them were opened, and they knew they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves covering. Why was naked suddenly a problem? Suddenly they had shame. So being naked wasn't the problem, it's the shame that came from being naked. They suddenly had shame, and so they wanted to cover their shame. You see what happened? They have guilt. Suddenly they have guilt. They ate of the fruit, they did something wrong, and suddenly they have guilt, and now they want to cover their guilt. As they heard God walking in the garden, they hide from the presence. So now we want to hide from God. This is the next point of what happens when we're in guilt. First we want to cover it up, then we want to hide. How do you hide from God? It's stupid, right? But that's what guilt does to you. Guilt forces you to want to hide, wants to cover up what you're doing, so that no one else, because it's your shame. It's the shame of the guilt. Shame will cause you to hide. And the Lord said to Adam, where are you? And he said, I have heard your voice in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked and I hid myself. Why is he afraid? Because he's guilty. And he said, who told you you're naked? In other words, who have you been talking to? People, that is the key to this passage. Who have you been talking to? Everything started with Eve interacting in discussion with the devil. Who have you been talking to? Do not talk to the sin. Do not talk to the temptation. Do not engage in conversation. The first part of spiritual warfare is you don't talk. When we're doing deliverance ministry, we don't talk back and have a discussion with the demons. That is not what you do. You don't ever do that. You don't talk. Who have you been talking to? Once you start speaking and you commit that crime, that sin, then you try to hide because of your shame. And you try to hide from God. And slowly but surely you take yourself away, further and further away from God, and you isolate yourself from God because of your shame. It all began with talking, to discussing. You don't discuss sin, the activity of sin, shall we say, the temptation. You don't discuss with sin because then you end up in sin. And it's a better way of putting it. You don't discuss with sin because you end up in sin. Okay? You do talk about sin, but don't discuss it with it. Don't get into an interaction with sin because you end up in sin. Don't discuss the sin because you end up in there. I want you to be blessed as you go into spiritual warfare. And this is spiritual warfare. Sitting in this coronavirus right now is spiritual warfare, and it is an opportune time for us to get into sin. So be aware of who we're talking to, what we're talking to, and how we're discussing things. And especially with our spouses, don't bring them into our sin now too. Don't start with a trap. Who have you been talking to? Remember, if you're feeling shame, you need to repent of that, and God just wipes it all clean for you through the blood of Christ. I want you to be blessed, and I want you to be prosperous, and feel free to interact with me, help@unhingedchurch.com.